Hi, this is Rico Petrocelli. Let's talk Pawsox. Let's talk.
Let's talk Pawsox.
Let's talk Pawsox.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of Talkin Pawsox. I'm your host, Kimball Crossley, and we'll be coming to you throughout the baseball season, bringing you up to date on the Pawtucket Red Sox, Boston's AAA farm team. We'll also be bringing you news and features from the rest of the International League. In a moment, we're going to be joined by new Pawtucket manager Rico Petrocelli. But for right now, I'll get you posted on what our show is all about. We're going to come to you each month from the bullpen here at McCoy Stadium, the home of the Pawtucket Red Sox. And if our cameraman, Steve Jansura, will just pan around, you'll see the rest of the field. Rico Petrocelli about to come on camera with us. And then you'll see the Pawsox running around the outfield at McCoy Stadium. Each month, we'll try and keep you up to date on the Pawsox as well as the rest of the International League. We'll bring you a hot prospect, whichever Pawsox player looks like he's about to join the major leagues. And we'll be talking about issues from minor league baseball. Okay, Steve, you can pan back to me now. As we tape, the Pawsox are 5-5. Last year, they were the champions of the Eastern Division of the International League under Butch Hobson, who, of course, moved up to coach the Boston Red Sox, to manage the Boston Red Sox. So now Petrocelli is here, and the team looks to be struggling offensively. All 5 games they've won have been by 1 run and in their final at-bat. We'll be talking to Rico more about that in a minute. And we'll be right back with Rico Petrocelli and Talking Pawsox after these messages.
This is you and this is me.
Last year, thousands of innocent children were caught in the crossfire of violent crime. How much longer will you let this go on? Call this number now. We'll send you information on how you can protect your children from crime in your neighborhood. Together, we will take a bite out of crime.
Welcome back to Talking Pawsox. As you can see, I'm joined by first-year manager Rico Petrocelli. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Rico. All right, let's start right at the beginning where, as we tape, the Pawsox are 5-5 under their new manager. And how's the season going so far for you? I want to talk to you about just getting back in baseball and managing, but we'll start first about this first 10 games. And I guess you're 5-5 with 8 rainouts, is that right, or about that?
7 rainouts. Yeah, we have 7 doubleheaders to make up. And we had a bunch of them on the road, and the tough part was that they were 3-4 days in a row. So being on the road, you know, we're in hotels and hanging around, nothing to do. We couldn't really work out either, so guys were getting edgy. Everybody wanted to get out there and play. You know, beginning of the season, you can't wait to get out there. Around August, when the games start piling up and you get the hot weather, and you wouldn't mind a day off here and there, but early on you like to get it going.
So what has that done for the team? I mean, you've had to move back pitchers, even the hitters are rusty because they can't go out and hit. It's really kind of thrown you off, hasn't it?
Somewhat, yeah. You know, the hitters, of course, would like to get in there every day to get their eyes, the timing, and feel comfortable at the plate. Pitchers too have to do the same with their control, so it is important that they get in games. They have been throwing on the side. We have them throw a little bit of batting practice when we get a chance, but it's still not the same as the game. But I'll tell you, even with the rainouts and the time that we've had off, the pitchers have really done a good job. Hitters maybe take a little bit more time. It's hard to say, but you know, it's a little tougher to get them that batting practice.
All right, we'll get to the specifics of the team and maybe talk about a few individual players in a moment. But for right now, I do want to talk about you. How are you getting back in baseball? Because it's been a few years, and really since you retired, I believe in '76 or the start of actually '77.
Right.
You haven't spent a lot of time in a baseball uniform.
Well, actually, I've spent more time broadcasting. At '79, I did the Red Sox games with Ken Coleman for a year, and I did some writing, followed the team. I've been associated with baseball. I had batting schools and camps, and I've worked at a camp for a couple of years instructing, so I've been in the game itself, and then 3 years with the White Sox organization managing, and then of course with the Jimmy Fund. So I've been in and out of the game, but you know, it's in your blood. You really, it doesn't leave you, even when you're watching games on TV, you're thinking about moves and what hitters can do and players and the other teams and so on. So you're in it, but this is, it takes a little time to get back into the swing of things. So it's still the first month, and just like the players trying to get in the groove, I am too.
What are the problems? What are the parts where you find yourself struggling to get in that groove the most?
Nothing specific. I would say just the overall way of the game. I don't know of any other word I could think of right now, but just coming to the ballpark, scheduling, going on the road, and you know, having to get the bus, extra work, extra infield, not infield, but extra batting practice times. This whole thing, of course, the lineups and things like that. The pitching, getting the pitching going. Also, it's taken a little time. I felt a little awkward the first week or so, getting guys up out of the bullpen and who we wanted to get up, and getting to know our own players a little bit as well, as far as the pitchers are concerned. You know, what their roles were and all that. So I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable now, though.
Now, I only want to go into this as much as you're comfortable talking about it, but when you first retired as a player, I think you had some thoughts of getting back in the game, and you, I think, if I remember correctly from your initial press conference, you talked about how you maybe would have coached in other organizations, whatever, but you were more concerned at that time with family matters and your wife's health.
Well, that, plus I really had to make a decision. I got an offer to do some broadcasting, and I thought about where my future might be. At that time, being released, and that's a tough thing. I thought, well, maybe now is the time where I could, you know, get into the broadcast field. It's a good opportunity to do a talk show, and then maybe someday do the Red Sox games, which happened. But I thought maybe that's something I would do the rest of my life. Not thinking that I might want to get back on the field itself. But as you go along, things happen. You know, you mature, you think a little differently about things. In fact, I learned more about life, I guess, being out of the game than I did in baseball. When you're in baseball as a player, you're in the little bubble in that little sports world, and you don't realize a lot of other things until you get out of it and get into the, like to say, the real world, but it is true. And the working people, being out there, going out every day. I was in sales, I was in the business world, also in broadcasting. So it's a whole different world out there than the player realizes it, and you don't realize it until you're out of it.
But now you're right back in the nuts and bolts of the game. I mean, I think managing a AAA team is about as hands-on as you can get, right? You know, even managing a big league club, sometimes I think the guys can be a little more hands-off than you have to be down here at this level, because you're with these guys all the time, riding the buses with them. You spend a lot more time with them, and then obviously I think you do more instructing because they're younger players.
That's true. You do, as a manager in the minors, yeah, you do some instructing, get on all areas. I mean, not just hitting, fielding. You know, you try to work with base running. So you try to learn as much as you can while you're a player and then while you're out of the game or as a coach, and pass it along to the players. And it's true, and the communication's important. I try to be, you know, available to the players as much as possible. But there's 23 guys, and you can't be there for everybody all the time. But I try to keep things loose.
So let's talk about the team again now. I'd mentioned the 5 one-run victories, and the offense has not really been there so far, which isn't that unusual because usually in colder weather they don't hit. But I do think that if you look at this team, the strength has got to be the pitching and the staff, and not so much the hitting, which is different than maybe the Pawsox teams the past couple of years.
Well, it is a pretty good pitching staff, guys who have had experience in the big leagues. John Dobson's down rehabbing. Kevin Morton, John Cerruti, Plimpton, a lot of the guys, you know, they've all been had some major league experience, and it's just a matter of them pitching well. And if the need arises for the big club to, you know, to call someone up, they'll be available. It's great. The hitting end of it, we have guys that are major league caliber, certainly, and some of the younger players who are going to be major league players. So it's a learning process for some of them. Some of the veterans want to get back into the swing of things because it's not a pun. I mean, you know, hitting the ball and having a good year so that they might get picked up by another club, if not by the Red Sox.
Now, you've already lost maybe your top hitter so far. Bob Zupsick just a few days ago was called up to Boston. Talk a little bit about Bob. There's a guy that does what I don't think too many hitters do. He just turned it on the last couple of years after really struggling for a couple of years at the minor league level.
That's what happens. That's just the way it happens. A guy with some abilities, for one reason or another, struggles. You try to, you do have patience with him. You try to get him as much work as possible, and it takes time. Some guys come on faster than others. Bob is a guy who has learned the strike zone a little bit better. He's learned to hit his pitch more, and he's had some success doing it. Still would like to see him become a little bit more aggressive at the plates. With that type of hitter, most power type hitters, you don't worry about them striking out. I think the fans and sometimes the media, they say, well, this guy strikes out so much, 110 times or whatever or more. But for a power type hitter, there's nothing wrong with that, because he's got to be aggressive. He's going to go after bad pitches once in a while, but he's also going to produce for you when you need it.
Okay, well, we're running out of time for our first edition with you, but we'll be talking to you throughout the season as we go along here on Talking Pawsox.
Okay.
And good luck. I hope the bats do come around and the pitching stays stable. And we'll be right back with more of Talking Pawsox after these messages.
Without the men and women of the National Guard and Reserve, 44% of our nation's defense just wouldn't be there. So be a hero. Give your employees the freedom to protect ours.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Pawsox. Now, each month we're going to try and bring you up to date on maybe the latest Pawsox prospect, the guy that's really hitting the ball well, or throwing the ball well, or fielding the ball well, the guy that is probably soon going to get his trip up to the major leagues. Well, this month it's a little bit different. We were going to feature Bob Zupsick, but he got the call a little early. He was the Pawsox best hitter so far this year, hitting .333 early on with a lot of walks and some power. So Bob got the call this week, so we're going to focus instead on John Dobson, the right-handed pitcher. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's no prospect, because John Dobson's been up there before. Well, he has been up there before, but John's coming off of 2 years of rehabilitating an injured elbow. So we talked to him about his rehabilitation and getting back to the major leagues. Okay, John, you're not what they would normally be considered a prospect, but you must feel a bit like one the way you've had to battle back these last couple of years.
Yeah, I've been off like 2 years now. I had that Tommy John surgery, which is where they take a ligament out of your wrist and replace it in your elbow. And it's been like almost 2 years since I've been rehabbing and trying to make my way back to Boston. And right now, physically, I feel fine, and I think I'm throwing like I did 2-3 years ago. And I'm on rehab for 30 days, and that date comes up May 12th, and a decision has to be made on the big league level.
How anxious are you to get back up there and get back to getting major league hitters out?
Well, it's been a long time. I'm real anxious, and I've been working hard, and I can't wait to get back there.
You've had to go through a long rehab before, but has this one been tougher than the other one?
Yeah, I had in '85. I had rotator cuff surgery on my shoulder, and that only took like 6 months to come back, and I was right back competing again in spring training. But Tommy John surgery takes 14, 15, 16, sometimes 2 years to come back from until you regain your full strength. And it's been real frustrating at times, but there's a lot of money there to be made, and that's what makes you work and drive hard to get back there. And
you say you think you have your full arsenal of pitches back?
Yeah, I'm throwing everything. I've always been a sinker ball slider pitcher, and I'm throwing a lot more changeups now, but I haven't changed anything. I'm throwing velocities there. I'm throwing all my pitches, so I'm pretty much where I want to be right now.
We all grow up. Along the way, learning from whomever is willing to teach us. And it's interesting, isn't it, how today our eyes get opened and minds get broadened, where our heroes come from and dreams begin. And as television grows up with us, maybe the secret lies not so much in trying to know what tomorrow will bring, but just in making sure we know someone who does.
You know, there's been a lot of talk in the world of baseball the last few years about minority involvement in baseball. Some people argue that there's not enough minorities involved in the managerial aspects and the coaching and the front office aspects of baseball. Well, we had a chance to talk with Richmond Braves manager Chris Chambliss about these issues. Okay, Chris, we'll start right off with the obvious issue of minority managing. Do you feel like a certain responsibility? Do you feel like you're carrying the torch a bit for minorities and trying to break into the major league ranks?
Not really. I'm just being myself, really. I think there's a need for more black managers in the game, and if I can do anything that opens any more doors, then I'd be glad to do that.
You don't want to close any doors on yourself either, but is there some part of the system that is flawed and maybe a reason why we haven't seen more minority managers?
Well, I'm not that familiar with the system to know that. That's a question that you'd have to be in management to really answer that question. I can't.
Now you've gone about it you've chosen to go down and obviously do what you're doing here and manage in the minors as opposed to like trying to get a major league coaching job and go about it that route. Could you just talk about that decision?
Well, there isn't any, as you know, there isn't any one specific route to the major leagues as a manager. Some guys get experience, some guys don't. Some guys have managed before and some guys haven't. So I did what I thought was best for me. I wanted to see if I could do it, see if I could learn some things down here, and that's what I've done. I just did it my way. I didn't really try to pattern myself after anybody special. I just did what I thought was best for myself.
Do you get annoyed because obviously you're coming off, I believe, 2 straight years of being a division winner, managing a division winner, so you might get annoyed that every time your name comes up in a major league ranks for a possible job, it's not this hot young manager that's done these things. It's a minority manager, prospective minority manager.
Well, I don't feel that way at all. I feel like winning is important to me, but it's not really what happens down here. Development is the important thing in the minor leagues, and as long as you develop players that can make it to the major leagues, I think that's the important thing.
We're at the home of Mrs. Lillian Herbst, who is making her first attempt at ordering a pay-per-view movie. Tentatively, she settles into her chair with the pay-per-view listings. She's made her selection. Now she's going for the phone. Look at those fingers fly. What confidence. She's listening to the easy ordering instructions. She responds.
She's done it! She's ordered a pay-per-view movie and she's made it look so easy! The gallery is going nuts! Order pay-per-view! It's that simple!
Well, the Richmond Braves are in town here at McCoy Stadium this week, and they're an interesting team because they've got several players playing on their squad right now who participated in the World Series last year for the parent Atlanta Braves. So I talked to them about what it's like to have played in the World Series last fall and now to be playing AAA baseball this April. Okay, Mark, 22 years old, and I think you might as well retire. You've seen it all. You've been at all levels of the minor leagues. You've played in the World Series. That's very strange.
Yeah, it is. I've been kind of fortunate. I turned my career around the middle of 1990. Things took off and kind of put things together last year and had the opportunity to go up there with the big league club and go to the playoffs and go to the World Series. It was a truly great experience.
Does it feel strange then to be finding yourself back here at AAA? Because I know you went up to Atlanta last year, did very well, and then of course did pitch in the World Series.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of tough, but the 11 guys they took are all capable of doing the job, and I feel like I got caught in kind of a numbers game, and it's tough being back down here, but some of the guys you play with, it makes it kind of easier, and it's tough because I know I can pitch there, but things will work out. I'm only 22 years old, my career is ahead of me.
And you're not the only one on this club in that boat. You got a couple of guys who played in the Classic last year that find themselves pitching and playing for Richmond.
Yeah, we do. We got a few guys. I know Keith Mitchell was in the World Series with us, and we got pitcher Randy St. Clair's that pitched in the World Series. So we got some guys with some experience. We got a pretty good ball club all the way around.
What are you working on to get back up there?
I'm just trying to be a little bit more consistent with my slider. It's come a long way since spring training, and I'm pleased with it the way it's going so far, but I still have to be a little bit more consistent with it and know when to use it and how to use it.
Just talk about the World Series for a second. What was that like?
Well, to put things into perspective, I remember I came in Game 1 of the World Series, and You know, the first thought I had on my mind was, man, I was an A-ball last year. You know, in 1990, I started the year off in A-ball. It's just amazing how quickly things can turn around in this game. You know, from 1990 being in A-ball to 91 pitching in the World Series, it's amazing.
Right, and when you're in A-ball, you're playing in some tiny little shacks of stadiums, and of course in the World Series, you got the whole world tuning in.
Yeah, it's true. You know, it's nerve-wracking. You know, you gotta realize there's a job to be done, but it's really scary.
Okay, Francisco, must be a pretty strange thing to go from playing in the playoffs in the World Series last year to being down here at AAA, but you got a couple guys on the team in that situation, and I guess it's more of a sign of the talent that is in this organization than anything.
Yes, like you said, it's pretty sad to be over here when you play in the World Series and playoff, and to be in the big league for the whole year, almost last year.
Well, it's funny because the Braves might not have even made it to the World Series if you hadn't hit a certain home run off of Rob Dibble. Is that right?
Yeah, you know, I think it's great, you know, to hit a home run as a good pitcher like him, and to drive like 3 RBIs against him and tie the game.
Everyone talked about that being such a key game down the stretch. What was the atmosphere on the bench? Did you guys feel like you could come back, or did your home run kind of wake everybody up?
Yeah, we got 2 outs, and I got 1 strike, 2 men in base, and they was thinking, oh, that guy can hit a home run, but, you know, a pitcher like Debo, you know, it's hard to hit it. So they was thinking, well, I don't know, you know, like they don't think we're going to tie it again and then come back and win it.
You've got some guys that are in an unusual situation for a triple player that they were just in the World Series last year. That must be pretty strange for them and maybe a bit for you.
Not at all for me. I've played in the World Series myself, but those guys, did a good job last year. They played in AA, and because of their talents and the Atlanta Braves needed those guys to help them win a pennant, and it was just a great opportunity for them to get a taste of the major leagues. But they're down here now, and they're playing hard down here, and that's the important thing. And maybe someday they'll be in the major leagues.
I guess it's just a sign of how much talent is in this organization that you've got several guys that could probably be maybe starting for other major league clubs.
Well, that remains to be seen whether that's true or not. They're good ball players. I don't know who you're talking about specifically. There's a lot of players on my team, but everybody gets their chance, and whether it comes this year or next year or whatever, everybody that's capable of playing in the major leagues usually gets some kind of a shot to play up there, and if they take advantage of it, then that's what happens. If you want to talk about Keith Mitchell started in AA last year, had a great season, came to AAA for part of the season, and because of his talents and defensively and as a potential good hitter, they needed him in the major leagues to help them win a pennant, and they used him for that reason. But they look at Keith Mitchell as a guy who can play every day, someday in the major leagues, and there's just no room for that kind of opening at the major league level for the Atlanta Braves. If you look at their outfield, you don't see any glaring need to have a starting outfielder, and that's what they think Keith Mitchell's going to be. So guess why Keith is in AAA? Well, it's the same way. You look at the veteran right-handed relievers, Pena, Berenguer and Freeman. Those fellas there are proven major league pitchers, and Mark Wohlers is another guy who's thought of to be as a potential closer for a major league club, and for him to pitch behind those guys and just not get the kind of work that he needs, he's in AAA, he's getting that experience.
You have another guy who I think is a real interesting player in that Francisco Cabrera. There's a guy that has been knocking on the door for a couple of years, and something seems to be holding him back. Is there an area, or is it just opportunity, but is there an area where he needs to improve to get up there or just find a position?
Well, it's hard to say. Frankie's an interesting situation. You're right. He plays first base and catcher. He's got a lot of power, but for him to play every day, he has to be a consistent performer, both defensively and offensively. And right now, because of his versatility, he's helping out the Atlanta Braves for the needs that they have right now. But whether he gets a chance to play every day or not is hard to tell. again, everybody gets their chance to play, and Frankie has proven that he can do a few things in the major leagues, but again, those openings have to come up for him to get an opportunity to play every day.
Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird.
Last year, thousands of innocent children were caught in the crossfire of violent crime.
Mama's gonna buy.
And it's not just the children who suffer.
Mama's gonna buy you a
How much longer will you let this go on? Call this number now. We'll send you information on how you can protect your children from crime and drugs in your neighborhood. Together, we will take a bite out of crime.
Well, thank you for tuning in to our first edition of Talking Pawsox. You know, we've been awfully lucky on this first show. We're coming to you, as you know, from the bullpen here at McCoy Stadium down the left field corner. And not once during this show was I hit by an errant batting practice foul ball or a cameraman hit by an errant ball or anything. Steve? Well, we'll have to come back to you next time on Talking Pawsox. Until then, I'll see how my cameraman's doing, and we'll see you next time.
Let's talk.
Let's talk Pawsox.
Let's talk Pawsox.